Good evening and welcome to the September 28, 2020 Menlo Park Planning Commission. This is the call to order. We have 6 of our planning commissioners present tonight. We have Chris DeCardi. Please feel free to show your video for a moment as I call your name. Thank you. Mike Doran. Hello, Mike, and Larry Kale. Thank you. We have Camille Kennedy and Michelle Tate. And I am Henry Riggs, your chair this evening. We start our meetings with reports and announcements, but first let me just acknowledge that this is still a bit challenging, even for us, as it turns out, to hold meetings on GoToWebinar or Zoom or whatever we might use. Largely making sure that connections are here and the control panel is working. So for those listening or watching, on the right side of your screen, if you have joined our meeting, you should have a control panel, and on that control panel is an icon of a hand. You will use that if you want to ask to speak. I have the very able assistance of Leo Tapia tonight, along with other members of our planning staff. And when we are in a public comment period, we will invite people to click on that hand and be recognized to speak. And that's coming up. But first, let me introduce Corinna, who will, Corinna Sandemeyer is our lead planner and may have either a report or announcement regarding our Planning Commission issues tonight.
Good evening, Chair Riggs and Commissioners. I actually don't have any specific updates, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you. Are there any commissioner questions for Ms. Sandemeyer? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to the next item. This is our general public comment period. While for each of the 2 hearings we will conduct tonight, we have a dedicated public comment period. This period is for those who would like to address the commission on some other matter than our 2 hearings. Our 2 hearings are for projects on Roble Avenue and Hoover Street, respectively. If you would like to make a comment to your planning commission, now would be the time to look for that hand icon, click on it, and we'll be able to give you 3 minutes to speak. Mr. Tapia, do you see any indication of a desire to speak?
Good evening, Chair Riggs, members of the public, and fellow planning commissioners. So yeah, as Chair Riggs noted, if you do have a question or comment that you would like to ask at this time, please feel free to click on that green hand icon on your, in your control panel. Otherwise, you can write in a question in the control panel. There is a question field which you can use to type in a question, and that'll pop in on our end, which we can then read aloud. So again, if you have a question that you verbally want to speak, please utilize that microphone icon. Alternatively, use the question field if you want to type in your comment or question at this time. But Chair Riggs, I'm not seeing any comments or questions coming in at this time.
All right, well, this evening just may not be the evening for comments. So seeing no comments, we will close the public comment period and move on to the consent calendar. This is the portion of the meeting where items are posted for our approval that don't generally require discussion. In this case, we have the approval of our meeting minutes from August 31, 2020. I would like to call for either a motion or some other comment on the minutes from any of my fellow commissioners. Mr. DeCardi.
I'll move to approve as submitted.
Thank you. We have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion to approve by Commissioner DeCardi and a motion to, and a second by Commissioner Doran. All those in favor, if you would click on your video and raise your hands. I have Commissioner Kennedy, Commissioner Kale, Vice Chair Doran, Mr. DeCardi, and Ms. Tate, do you approve of the minutes or do you wish to vote to abstain due to absence or to not approve?
Abstain due to absence.
All right, thank you. And I will vote to approve. So the minutes are approved, 5 in favor, 1 abstention. And I neglected to mention earlier that our 7th Commissioner, Andrew Barnes, is absent tonight due to other commitments. That concludes our consent calendar, and we will move into item F, our public hearings. The first item, first of 2 on the calendar, is a use permit revision request by Verlin Carol Aebi, I hope I pronounced that correctly, of 973 Roble Avenue. This is a request for a use permit revision to modify previously approved plans to demolish an existing 1-story single-family residence and detached garage and construct a new 2-story single-family residence with a basement and detached 2-car garage on a substandard lot with regard to width. I'm sorry, regard to minimum lot width in the R3 apartment zoning district. The approved use permit from last year included excavation within the required right side setback for a basement light well. The modifications offered tonight include the elimination of the light well for a reduced basement and an increase in the detached garage size to a 3-car garage from a 2-car garage plus storage, creating an increase in building coverage. A new accessory dwelling unit, or ADU as we call them, is proposed above the detached garage, which would exceed the maximum height for a detached ADU per our zoning and requires therefore a use permit. And this is Mr. Paz. Good evening. Do we have any additional notes on this project tonight?
Good evening. We do not have any additions or updates to the report at this time, but staff is available for questions.
Commission members, are there any questions regarding this project? For example, the maximum height for an ADU, setbacks, or other questions to clarify for this evening? Mr. Kale.
Thank you. Actually, that's exactly what I wanted to ask staff about, was the about the height. Hi. So because this zone has a 35-foot height limit, this is not a variance, correct?
So to clarify that point, actually, it's the ADU ordinance itself includes a provision that allows modification of development standards through use permit, and for that reason, they're allowed to request a use permit to modify the maximum height in this case.
Would that be the same for a R1 zone?
Correct. Yeah. If you were proposing an ADU in an R1 zone, the height is similarly 16 feet. That's the maximum height for an ADU, a detached ADU. And so if you wanted to propose something at 17 or anything above 16, you could request a use permit to modify that development regulation.
You may not know how to answer this, but I'm just curious on the background of that, because if you want to do an 8-foot ceiling on 2 floors, you're already over 16 feet. So is the intent to regulate 2-story structures with ADUs on them?
It has that effect, and I think part of the conversation with the state law was to make sure that we're streamlining these new units that are up to 800 square feet and 16 feet in height. So those are standards that are prescribed by the state, and so things beyond that may require some additional discretion as they have potentially greater impacts on the neighbors.
Okay, and my last question is, there was a note kind of buried in attachment G, which was the letter from Square 3, and it mentioned that there was said see attached itemized list of changes. Is that not there, or is that part of the drawings, or I just want to make sure I didn't miss it?
I believe that may have been a reference to the response to comment letter that was overlooked in the review of the project description letter. I'll turn to Karina to confirm, but I believe we can make that available if needed.
Okay.
And the applicant will also be walking you through the changes as well.
Great, thank you.
All right, any other commissioners have questions? Mr. Dorn.
Yes, I'd just like to clarify what the setbacks actually are in the ADU. I saw in the staff report that by being an ADU, it's allowed to have smaller setbacks. Is it built right up to the 4-foot side setback and 10-foot rear setback?
So the ADU is allowed to have 4-foot side and 4-foot rear setbacks, as it's no larger than 800 square feet. And I'm having just a tiny bit of a technical difficulty here, but I believe that it is at 4 feet from the rear and 4 feet from the left side, and it has a greater setback from the right side. And my digital plans are loading.
Okay, thank you.
And I have a question. In the staff report, actually on the first page, under previous Planning Commission review, the conditions that were requested at that time are listed. The following paragraph or the following page suggests 3 new conditions. I would just like to clarify, do the 3 new conditions, because this is a use permit revision, do they take the place of the previous conditions, or do they only modify those conditions that are in the subject of the new ones? In other words, the new conditions refer to stairwell windows and office window, but there were originally conditions regarding, for example, the siding. Do the previous conditions otherwise remain?
Yes, and the preceding paragraph was meant to clarify that those have been addressed with notes in the project plans, and so the new conditions of approval would govern if the use permit revision were approved. And so anything that is not included in the recommended actions or shown in the proposed plans, they would not be required to do. However, with respect to the comment about the condition regarding the siding and the materials, that is proposed to be a wider siding through notes on the plans.
And I think there was something about mitered corners.
Correct, yes. Both of those features would be, as shown in the plans, they would make it through to the building permit,
All
and
right.
we would hold them to that.
Okay, very good. I think that's what I was leading to. Because in some cases we consider some changes to be minor. And in this case, they were previous conditions. All right, and thank you for having taken note of that. All right, I don't have any further questions. Do any other commissioners have questions before we go to the applicant presentation? All right, seeing none. Mr. Paz, if you would invite the applicant and through your technical wizardry, put necessary items on the board.
Certainly, and I'll just say I was able to load the site plan here into, I believe it was Commissioner Doran's question. There is a 5-foot 4-inch setback on the left side and the 4-foot rear setback. I apologize for the delay in getting that up to you. And then Leo, I think, is able to bring up the plans, and Carl, whenever you're ready.
Oh, hello.
Good evening.
Hi, this is Carl Hess from Square 3 Architecture. And yeah, thanks for seeing our project again. This is my first time doing the go-to presentation, so I ask that you bear with me. So as you are aware and have read and hopefully remember, this project went through the use permit hearing process about a year ago. We were approved with a few minor conditions. Am I able to scroll? And one of the things that we had discussed at that hearing, if you remember, was the owner's ideal interest in an ADU. And at that time, it was not allowed by the R3 zoning. It's since the codes have changed. It's now an allowed addition or inclusion in the R3 zone. And we, along with the owners, have made some revisions to our originally proposed and approved package to include an ADU. We dealt with Tom Smith on this quite a bit at the beginning of the process, and Ori took over and has prepared his extremely thorough staff report. So one of the changes that were made leading towards the addition of the ADU was that we eliminated the majority of the basement, which included the light well that was located here. Okay, let me try to scroll to the floor plan. Sorry. So this is the original ground floor plan. Down below is the proposed ground floor plan. We had a large light well that served the fairly large basement. The basement's been reduced to just a couple hundred square feet. And it's basically utility and a little bit of storage space. So this light well has been eliminated, and that in turn has some potential influence on some translucent windows that may or may not have been required on the second floor. Incidentally, here on the left, you'll see the original approved garage floor plan and our proposed new garage floor plan that's been increased to a 3-car garage to provide a covered parking space for the ADU, which is proposed to be above the garage. Sorry, my scroll is very delayed. Actually, right now, no, there it goes. I'm going to come back to this. Go to the, sorry. So this is the originally approved and the proposed new right side elevation, the south side, that faces the apartment building that has a driveway between this building and their building. So the separation between the two buildings is 27 feet, or 25 feet, sorry. Anyway, there seemed to be some confusion in the transcribing of the original conditions of approval and whether these windows here on the second floor, which is a second floor living area, were to be translucent or not. We had proposed them as clear. We'd like them to be clear. If you go back and look at the video of the previous hearing back a year ago, our understanding is that they were not required to be translucent. In any case, with the removal of the light well, there's a lot more space now, the full 10-foot side setback, and which will provide more space for landscape screening. And we would like to clarify that the preference is that these windows are able to be clear. That's all I've got to say about the house. So again, the main reason for the submittal of this revision was the addition of the ADU. I showed you the floor plan of the proposed garage. The proposed ADU sits on top of that. In regard to the height request or variation request, we are asking for an allowance for the height, which incidentally is this bridge. So it's not the whole width or length of the building, but just a portion and it's just that ridge point to exceed the 16 feet. And that's really the product of, as Commissioner Larry stated before, the plate heights of 8 feet on both levels, plus a floor thickness of we're allowing 14 inches. There'll certainly be some significant beams at the garage or at the floor level of the ADU, and then the modestly pitched 4 and 12 roof over this. And I'll scroll to the elevations here shortly, but the ADU is a very simple layout of with a complement of spaces or conventional complement of spaces, including a kitchen, living dining space, 1 bedroom, a small office, and a bathroom. It's got just an open stair that accesses the ADU with a minimal landing. So this, Ori, I think, clarified that the stair does not count towards site coverage. I'm going to try to scroll to the elevations. Oh, backing up to the house just for reference, here's the old basement plan. You can see it was fairly large. It wasn't a full basement, but significant basement, and the new basement is significantly smaller. It's just the stair, hallway, some storage under the stair, and it's primarily for utility, to provide a utility room. Sorry. So this is the original 2.5 car garage, front elevation or street facing elevation. And this is our proposed elevation of the 3-car garage space. Again, one space for the ADU, and then the ADU that sits on top of that. You probably you've noticed that the roof pitch on the main house is steeper, but we did not carry that through here in an effort to keep the building height to a minimum. And again, it's a very modest 4 and 12 roof pitch. The exterior materials would complement the house, smooth stucco, horizontal siding, and that was a condition of approval with the house to use a thicker wood or fiber cement siding, and the outside corners to be mitered. The metal roof would be the same on the ADU as the main house. The fire station type garage doors of aluminum and translucent glass are the same that we had proposed on the original garage. And this is here the original side of the garage. This would be the right side, the south side, and our proposed elevation access door into the garage space. That's the stair up with a minimal landing at the top. That was something that we recently had to alter. We had a larger landing, but that triggered counting it towards coverage and something else, which I can't recall at the moment. Anyway, and this is the entry door into the ADU with a small canopy roof for weather protection. We do have a small balcony on the front of the ADU. You might have noticed that. I'll try to, sorry. Yeah, here. That cantilevers out over the lower level and is bookended by the projection of the single car space and what is the bedroom above. The windows would match the house. Yeah. Here is a section of the original garage, and I stated before, you know, we've got 8-foot plate height, so floor to floor height is 9'2". I'm pretty sure that's what that says there. And then our ADU is plate height upstairs is also at 8 feet. So modest in size. And that concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Commission members, do we have questions? Just questions at this time. Yes, Mr. Kale.
Thank you. Hello, Mr. Hess.
Hello, Mr. Kale.
So I'll just say for the record that Carl and I are friends, but this doesn't present a conflict of interest for me. A couple quick things, just that second floor TV reading room and the translucent glazing that's discussed in the staff report. I read through the last minutes of the meeting, and my recollection is the same, that we didn't really ask for those to be translucent with the idea that there would be landscaping. And now that there's even more opportunity for landscaping there with the light wells gone, I think that was our intent at the last meeting. Just a quick question. Was the basement, I think I saw this, but was the basement removed in order to get the floor area you needed, or is that just a separate issue?
Both. I mean, a lot of it was driven by cost. The basement wasn't, it was determined that it wasn't needed, and it was a better financial effort to put that money towards an ADU, which again is what the owners had originally wanted to do, but at the time weren't allowed.
But did you need that floor area in the R3 zone?
Yeah. I can't remember.
I'm just curious. It's not critical.
Sorry.
All right. I think I missed your point when we were looking at the elevations of the garage ADU. You were talking about how just a part of the ridge was higher, but I think the entire structure above the roof line is over 16 feet.
Yeah, it is above 16 feet. What I was just getting at was our request to go to 21 foot 5 inches, I think it is. It's not like our perimeter walls are that tall.
Okay.
Our second story plate height is, I don't have that in front of me. No.
That's fine. That makes sense.
Yeah, it's only the ridge of the garage or of the roof over the ADU that reaches that 21 foot 5, where the plate height, which kind of defines the bulk, is quite a bit lower.
Okay. And then regarding, so I last meeting I had concerns about that large second floor deck, and which led to the discussions about the landscape plan. So I was just curious, have you, you don't have one yet, but have you made some progress on the landscape plan? And do you have like a type of plant and how tall it will grow and those kind of things in mind yet?
We haven't, no, we haven't.
Okay.
It'll come as part of the process, and but we didn't want to engage that person just yet until we were further along with this.
Okay. And my last question, when we talked at the last meeting about landscaping and privacy and planting along the driveway, I believe you mentioned, I saw this in notes, that there's about a foot of dirt between the driveway and the property line, and you mentioned looking at shifting that if possible to add more landscaping along the driveway and the fence. And I don't think that changed. Still looks like it's 1 foot of space.
Yeah, it is.
Is that something you'll still be looking at doing?
It depends what you tell us we have to do. We did look at that, and we felt that the spacing of the width of the driveway and our separation from the wall of the house didn't allow for that to be easily increased, and we felt we could deal with the 12 inches. And you guys approved that.
Well, we approved it with a landscape plan to be seen, and you mentioned that you would look into the adding more space. I'll just add that, you know, it is tight along the house with the I think it's a stairwell, but as you go towards the back where my concern for the deck is, you have more space to make an adjustment as needed, especially
Yeah.
where that two-story building is next door, which is the point of screening on that side.
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, I suppose we could, you know, it would create a curve or a kink in the driveway, but it could veer over to the right as you're driving down the driveway if we had to do that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's what I was alluding to, that if you
Yeah.
could make that adjustment.
Yeah, it would make it a little harder to back out. Although, you know, we do have some space there that you could ideally do a 3-point turn and drive out.
Yeah. Okay.
So, yeah.
That was it. That was my suggestion. Great. Thank you.
Yep.
Do we have any other commissioner questions at this point before I go to public comment? I have a question. Mr. Paz, perhaps I can address that to you. I was also curious, just for future reference, and R3 and GFA versus residential and single-family residential floor areas. Could there be more basement under the GFA for this project? I was just curious. Or lot
Yes.
coverage is the case.
Yes, yeah. The state law allows the ADU, if it's built at the same time as a new home, the ADU can exceed the lot coverage and floor area for a given lot by up to the area of the ADU, provided it's not greater than 800 square feet.
Okay, that's what I thought. Thank you. And I did notice in the staff report that the landscaping had been deferred. That's again for Mr. Paz, had been deferred to the building permit stage. Is this largely because one doesn't necessarily need to hire a landscape architect, do a finished design at use permit stage?
Yes, yeah, in part. It's an understanding that they have not yet developed that, and then with the new proposal as well, wanted to kind of confirm that whether or not the commission would be granting the use permit revision before going through that, and yeah.
All right, makes sense. And then thank you, Mr. Paz. And then it has I noticed that, couldn't help but notice that the exterior materials on the ADU change roughly halfway down a two-story wall surface. I was not immediately able to align that with a change in the plan shape. Is that a flat surface?
Sorry, Commissioner Riggs, you're cut out there and I couldn't hear what you were asking.
Sorry, we're testing the limits of the data here.
Yeah.
And
You're still
material changes mid-wall on an elevation. Does that align with a corresponding plan offset?
Oh, there is not a plan, a physical offset there. It was a identified transition point that made sense to sort of define the what we considered the two volumes that make up the building. And it was somewhat in response to a request from planning staff to provide more variation in the siding materials. We originally had wrapped the horizontal siding around the front of the building, that single car garage bump out in the bedroom. And then down the side, and we had stopped it partway down the side. I forget exactly how far down, and we were asked to step further because they felt that there was too much stucco, flat stucco wall surfaces.
All right, thank you.
We didn't,
And,
because we were built up to the setbacks and we're kind of shoehorned in there, it would have been a more significant compromise to the layout of the structure to create an offset in the wall to make that more defined the transition.
okay, thank you.
Yep.
And then I apologize for going back and forth, Mr. Paz. Am I reading it correctly? Do we have 20 feet between the ADU and the adjacent property structure? Or is that, I honestly don't recall. I guess the building department requires 10 feet, is that correct?
That is correct, if I'm allowed to answer that.
Thank you, Carl. I was just going to say I'll defer to Carl with that one. And then as far as the zoning requirements for separation between buildings, again, with the ADUs, the limitations that are enforceable are limited, meaning we're not able to require anything greater than that 4-foot side and rear setback as a result of the state laws.
Okay. All right, thank you very much. Those are my questions. And I one last shot at commissioner questions, and then we'll move to see if there's any public comment. All right, and so I'll open the public comment period. Again, there is a hand icon on the right side of your screen if you are watching this late night from your home office and would like to comment on the project. You click on the icon, it will tell Mr. Tapia that you would like to speak. Leo, do you see any hands?
Good evening, Chair Riggs again, and members of the public. At this time, I am not seeing any questions, comments, or anything from the members of the public, but we can leave it open for a bit if you would like.
Well, we did give it a bit of an intro to steer people toward the screen, so I think we can close the public comment period and bring it back to the commissioners for projects. Commissioners, any further comments? Mr. Kaya.
Thank you. And you are still freezing up a lot, Commissioner Riggs.
Oh, wonderful. Well, let me see if I can I'm curious what else I have running, so thank you for pointing that out.
Sure. So I just want to say that it's great that this project now has an ADU, so we have more housing available. I struggle with the the approval of the 16 feet, the area over 16 feet, and really more with the state law that allows a 2-story ADU, but only allows up to 16 feet. I think the project is supportable, that trying to keep it under 16 feet as much as possible with the 8-foot ceilings on both floors. And the only other comment was, regarding just to clarify, the TV reading room, I think it's fine leaving that as not a translucent, just regular glazing. So I'm not going to make a motion at this point, but the project, all the changes are very supportable.
All right, any other commissioners? Vice Chair Doran? Your audio may not be on.
Yeah, I'm on now.
Okay.
I struggle with the combination of the ADU setbacks, but the height in excess of what is allowed for the ADU. Certainly, I think we need the housing, and I, in general, support the additions of ADUs to the housing stock. And the state tells us, we cannot deny an ADU on the basis of setbacks if they have 4-foot setbacks, but that's predicated on having a height not in excess of 16 feet. So I think we're not required by the state to approve this. And I really have some reservations about it. I think that it's beyond what was envisioned by the state, and it's certainly beyond what was envisioned in the pre-ADU Act zoning for this lot. So I'm not going to make a motion at this time either, but I have to say I think that this is pushing the boundaries of what's permissible for the ADU. Not just beyond, of course, what we had in Menlo Park prior to the state's actions, but beyond what was envisioned by the state. So I think that I could certainly support an ADU on the property with a height above 16 feet if it weren't built right up to the 4-foot setback. And I could support an ADU on the property built up to the 4-foot setback if it complied with the 16-foot height limit. But I'm having problems with the combination.
All right, other commissioners commenting? This is a very interesting project because it's an ADU and we have great interest in these projects. Commissioner DeCardi.
I too am having terrible connectivity tonight. Can people hear me?
Yes, so far.
Okay. Yeah, I'm supportive of ADUs. Appreciate the effort to bring this project back. It's very clear. I too am struggling just with the questions raised by Commissioners Doran and Kale. The rest seems fine to me. What I couldn't get from the various written comments was, and this may be for staff, have we heard from the property owner that is essentially immediately to the rear of the proposed ADU? And are any of those comments from that residence, or has staff heard, or has the property owner had engagement with the property owner immediately to the rear, the one that would have on one level, the greatest impact from that additional 5+ feet running long ways on the back of the garage? So it's either a question for staff or the applicant if we've heard from that property owner.
Mr. Paz?
Just one moment. I might turn to Carl and the owners if they can quickly confirm. I'm just double checking the the address and the address of the person who wrote in, and I'm not able to do that as quickly digitally as I would be with the hard copies. Carl or Verl, can you chime in if you've communicated directly with the neighbor to the rear while I look this up?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, we did have a neighborhood outreach meeting early on, and as it turns out, nobody showed up. And then we didn't do another one because of the pandemic that had started just when we began to pursue this. And then there were, I think, two letters that you received, Ori, or Tom had received them. But I don't think either one of them was from the neighbor behind. Yeah, one was from, actually, I forget which, I have to look back at which addresses they were. But my recollection was it was not from the neighbor behind.
I similarly recall that, and I'm just looking for the address. The neighbor with the most concerns was a Brad Ward, and I do not have his address listed in his correspondence.
So, Ori,
Are we on?
yeah, we're on. Turn on my, I don't know if you can see us. But anyway, my wife spoke with one of the neighbors, not the neighbor behind, recently about the project, and she'll talk to the commission about that.
To the south side of 973, there's a woman who lives on the first floor of that apartment complex. Her name's Shalina Taylor, and she's very excited about the new construction. Has no reservations, is looking forward to having us as neighbors. So that was well, that was before COVID, so probably November.
No, it was during COVID.
Does it?
Yeah, and you talked to her this summer. Yeah. But you know, we haven't really, and we sent letters to all of the neighbors and all of the property owners. So the people, I believe, the communications that the city received were from people who are living in the apartments. I mean, they're of course very important. They'll be our neighbors. We want to have good relations with them, but none of the property owners have ever responded to any of our communications. And some of the property owners, the ones on each side, north and south, live out of state. The property owner who lives directly behind us lives in Portola Valley and owns a number of properties in Menlo Park. It's my understanding, at least. And that person didn't respond either. So we did reach out, and you know, for whatever reason, haven't received feedback.
All right, thank you. Any follow-up to that, Commissioner DeCardi?
No, I would just say that, you know, I appreciate it, just sort of along lines of Commissioners Doran and Kale and where I am at the moment, which is, given where this is in the surrounding buildings in the zoning district, given that and I'm hugely in favor of ADUs, more housing and greater density, and given that from this conversation, it looks like there was good faith effort to reach out and to get feedback from neighbors, and we do not have a groundswell of concern, not to disregard the one long letter that we do have. In general, I probably tilt toward inclined to approve it.
All right, thank you. Other commissioners? All right, seeing no screens popping up, I'll make a couple of comments and maybe a I don't know if the word is summary, but a reaction to some comments made so far. I agree with Commissioner Kale that the windows can and should be clear at the reading room. My recurring concern about second floor windows has to do with their tendency to look over on someone else's backyard, particularly adjacent one-story homes, and particularly in a predominantly one-story neighborhood. This is not only a two-story neighborhood, but it's also, frankly, an apartment building neighborhood. It's zoned that way, and actually in terms of zoning intentions, this wasn't really meant to be a single family with an ADU, but it does work out as 2 units. So that is compatible with our hopes. Regarding the height, I try to think back to when we looked at height issues here at my neighborhood when we were drafting the overlay. And we ended up doing a number of diagrams, and we decided to settle on the daylight plane as the limiting factor, largely because it kept the plate height down. And that is the most relevant factor in terms of what mass you have next door. So where the ADU law, in order to comply with the state, is 16 feet, that would allow for a 16-foot plate height, or actually a 16-foot roof deck height with a parapet above that. And that is, I believe, what is the limiting factor for neighbors. The pitched roof, especially a 4 and 12, from close up, you don't even get to see the roof. So the 16-foot limit is sort of a starting point, and then the code says, as prescribed by the state, an increase in height shall be allowed if a use permit is granted. In other words, the planning commission, or effectively the same body in other town nomenclature, would have to pass judgment on whether an increase in height is a particular problem. So if this were in, say, an Eichler neighborhood of one-story homes, adding height would not just stick out like a sore thumb, which we're not supposed to comment on, but it would provide a San Gimignano tower, in effect, to look at 5 or 6 backyards. And that is an issue. But again, we have an apartment building neighborhood. So as Mr. Doran indicated, the sort of tipping point is that we, by law with an ADU, have a 4-foot setback, where otherwise it would be anywhere from a 5 to 10-foot setback, depending on the zoning. In other words, like the main building. So setting it back an additional 5 feet would certainly make a difference to the effect of adjacent height. I think that's the balance that we are tasked with judging. So I'll just throw out the concept that if this is a structure not under the ADU code and conforming to the setback, the allowable height, I believe, is 38 feet. And in this case, the applicant is asking to move from 16 feet to 21'6". So given the gray area that we're in, and that is why we are called to make a judgment, it is at 5'6" from the low end, the 16 feet, it does seem like a reasonable or modest request. And I would say, unless there is a visible challenge at the front or rear property lines. And I don't see that. I may be missing something, but what we have adjacent primarily are two-story buildings in the 38-foot height limit zone. So it rather seems reasonable to me. Lacking other input, I would like to make a motion and see if it's supportable. Firstly, to accept the use of clear glass at the reading room. I hadn't finished my earlier thought that I'm frequently concerned about stairwells, but that's because of the angle of view and often the height of the window relative to the viewer, and that is already embedded in the previous approval. I support Mr. Kale's urging that landscape be refined so that the clear glass at the reading room is shielded to the neighbor on that side, and the same with the proposed balcony. And then I just have an aesthetic issue, and be happy to have others weigh in on the mid-wall change in materials. Normally in architectural design, that is a no-no. We simply do not do that. I do understand staff asking for an increase in the amount of siding because a two-story stucco wall is something that we have asked to limit or avoid if possible. But a change in materials generally is handled with either an offset, which could be a 3.5-inch offset, frankly, or even a reveal, something that says it was intentional, not that I ran out of wood. So I would like to suggest that we make an approval contingent on a minor adjustment to the plans that would show an intentional change in materials at the architect's suggestion and to be approved by staff. Ms. Sandmeyer, is that relatively clear? And Mr. Paz? I believe that's 4 items.
Hi, Commissioner Riggs. If possible, can you go through? And sorry, there is a motion to approve with the 4 items as project-specific conditions? Is that correct?
It's to approve as presented in your staff report, to include the clear glass at the TV reading room, to include the 21'6" height request, but to add or perhaps emphasize the previous request for landscaping that will adequately shield the balcony. And Mr. Kale, please jump in if I'm not stating these clearly. The balcony and the TV room windows on their respective structures. And then finally, the request for the architect to submit a solution to the mid-wall change in materials that will make it look more architecturally intentional. Mr. Kale.
Okay.
Yes, you correctly summarized what I mentioned earlier, and I will second the motion as stated. I do definitely agree with your concern about the material change at the rear. You know, it's at the very back of the project, so we tend to not, or at least I tend not to think about it too much. But of course, there's someone who's going to be looking at a blank wall back there, and the wood siding or whatever the painted siding helps. It's a little bit of a struggle because they're up against the 4-foot setback and the minimum parking. But I'm sure that people at Square 3 can come up with a creative solution. Maybe it's a 1-story offset or 2-story offset, some way to make that work. So I'll second the motion as proposed.
If I may, Chair Riggs, just to clarify, with the clear glass, the desire to go with clear glass, can we understand that the motion is to remove the project specific condition to make that glass translucent?
Yes, I think there was, as your staff report put it, there was a lack of clarity between commission comments and the staff report. And I'm afraid I'll have to count myself as a guilty party on there because I do review the minutes, and apparently I read that, shrugged, and thought, gee, I guess that's what we said. So yes, that was the intent.
Okay, and then just one additional point of clarification. We don't necessarily need a condition to approve the increase in height unless you're specifying a height other than what is shown in the plans. Is that?
Oh, I apologize. I did imply that it was a condition, and I did not mean it was a condition. I meant it was one of 4 points, which is that I'm speaking directly to the question in the staff report of whether the 20 is approved. My apologies. I'm acknowledging that issue, which is an issue of discussion here. Vice Chair Doran.
Thank you. So I just wanted to comment before we went to a vote. I think that Commissioner Riggs' analysis of the daylight plane and the relative height of this building as compared to what would be allowed with a greater setback, much greater height, I think it's quite possible the 21.5 feet wouldn't intrude into the daylight plane that would be required if it had been required. This building had the setbacks required in the zoning and the 35-foot height. So I find that very persuasive. I also find the point about the nature of the neighborhood very persuasive. So I'm prepared to support this motion, but I think in my own mind, it would be a very different situation in the hypothetical neighborhood of Eichlers or really most of the other residential neighborhoods in the city.
Agreed. And
yes,
please.
Yeah, if I may ask a question. So the portion where there's the issue with the 2 materials, that's on the main building. I think one of the commissioners was commenting about that being 4 feet from the rear property line, but that's the rear of the main building, and that's also where the concern is about landscaping for the balcony. Is that correct? So it's the east elevation.
I misread. You are correct. Well, no, actually, when I looked at the ADU elevations on A3-4, I'm puzzled at the fact that there was a all of. So I went to look for would be A5, which would be the ADU. I'm sorry, I closed that file in order to address the bandwidth issue.
Okay. Yeah, I apologize, I couldn't hear you. So it was, yeah.
A3.04 is elevations of the garage and ADU. I believe the next sheet typically would be the next sheet, and perhaps it can clarify for A3.05 that would have, I mean, what I'm looking for is the east elevation.
Chair Riggs, you're completely frozen and breaking up. If you don't mind, I think I can answer the question pretty easily.
Yes, please.
Um,
And I'm going to
So-
stop sharing a webcam so that in the hope that I don't break up so badly.
So I think what Commissioner Riggs and I were talking about is the rear of the ADU on sheet A3.05. It's the bottom left drawing. So it's not the material change at the main house. It's a material change at the ADU at the rear wall.
Okay. So I think there's a note, it says recessed reveal at transition between horizontal siding. So that's, does that kind of address it, or we need to?
I think Commissioner Riggs did mention a reveal or an offset, and I saw that note there. So I'll let Commissioner Riggs speak for himself, but I think his intent was to hopefully get some sort of architectural offset in the wall. Worst case would be a reveal, which is there. So I would side with what I think his intent is for an offset, but I'll let him try to answer for himself on that. Commissioner Riggs?
Thank you, Commissioner Gale. And I'm going to proceed video to see if it helps connection, although I'm not sure that's the issue. So I was not able to read the note regarding the reveal, so I apologize. Actually, and the restrictions in the plan, I'm inclined to accept remove that condition. Mr. Kale, up on that?
I think what I heard was you didn't see the reveal note, and now you're inclined to be okay with just the reveal and not concerned about an offset. Is that correct?
Yes. And is it true that my audio coming through broken?
Yes, your audio is still broken too. As the seconder of the motion, I accept that, and I'm happy to go with your with just the reveal.
Thank you, Ms. Sandemeyer, for spotting that. That simplifies the motion, and I hope simplifies the project approval. Pending any other comments, please hit your share webcam. Otherwise, I will call a vote. All those in favor, please show their webcam and indicate thumbs up. Commissioner Tate, Commissioner Kennedy, Commissioner Dorn, Commissioner Kale, and Commissioner Doherty. And Commissioner Riggs says thumbs up. So for those present, that is unanimous, 6-0. The project is approved. The class regarding the additional planting and clear glass, which depended on the additional planting. Enjoy our extended. I'm sorry, it's been 11 months since your last approval. Congratulations. Our next project is a use permit. Applicant O'Brien Custom Homes LLC for 1340 Hoover Street. This is a request for a use permit to demolish an existing two-story single-family residence and a detached garage and construct a new two-story single-family residence with attached garages on two new two-story residences with attached garages on a substandard lot with respect to lot width in R3 apartment zone. The proposal includes administrative review of a tentative parcel map to subdivide the project into two condominium units. Mr. Pruder, do you have any additional comments on the project tonight?
Good evening, Chair Riggs and commissioners and everyone attending. I have no specific comments about the project, but we did receive two public comments, one by email and one by electronic submission, the comment card format on our website. And I'm happy to read those now. And then following the reading of those two comments, I will be available for any questions that you or the other commissioners, fellow commissioners may have. So if staff could assist in presenting the two comments, the first of which is an email, as I mentioned. I'll go ahead and read that now. And then following that, I'll read the second of the two comments. The first comment, just to clarify for the Planning Commission, you did receive that hopefully by email this morning. I had sent it out, but I'll read this now for the public and everyone's benefit. And it reads, it's dated Sunday, September 27, 2020 at 1:48 p.m. Reading, Dear Mr. Pruder, we recently received notice from the City of Menlo Park about the planned project at 1340 Hoover Street. We are writing to the Commission as a homeowner of 677 Valparaiso Avenue, which is adjacent to the left-hand side of the planned subdivision. While our home entry is on Valparaiso Avenue, the rear end of our home and our narrow backyard will be facing the left side yard of the rear structure proposed at 1340 Hoover Street. First, we want to begin by mentioning that while we understand the R3 zoning in our area permits multiple structures to be built on single lots, it is untrue that the prior owner of 1340 Hoover Street approached us in 2018 with a handwritten note expressing these plans and asking if we had any concerns. We never received a note nor had any related conversations about the same. Instead, we only learned of the potential plans to subdivide the lot from a real estate agent who, thank you, staff. Let's go ahead.
It's the real estate agent, as I recall.
Yes, correct. Thank you. Just trying to zoom in here a little bit. Okay. Yes. We'd obviously prefer to maintain the privacy we have today, which is a single home on the 1340 Hoover lot and our backyard adjacent to theirs. However, we do appreciate that the proposed development is consistent with the overall character of the neighborhood and have resigned to the fact that the Commission will be approving two homes to be built on the substandard lot. Our intention is with this letter then is to simply outline some of our concerns and ask that the Commission takes these into consideration as the plan moves forward. Number one, regarding noise and during construction. Because the entire rear side of our home is only 10 feet from the 1340 Hoover lot, we expect there will be considerable noise during the construction process. We understand this is inevitable with any construction project, but the timing of this one will be especially disruptive for us over the next few months, as I'm sure it will be for neighbors on the other adjacent sides as well. We have two school-aged children who are both relegated to remote/home learning as their schools remain closed to students due to the pandemic. Our oldest attends Menlo Atherton High School, which, even for students who are interested in returning to classroom learning, will likely remain closed until at least the second semester. I'm also employed by a company that won't allow return to office for work until at least Q1 of 2021, and I'm therefore working from home. If construction were to begin during the fall of 2020, it will be nearly impossible for us to continue this arrangement, as we'd be struggling to participate on Zoom calls all throughout the day while drilling, hammering, etc. is taking place within 20 feet of our windows. We are not sure what flexibility there is to delay construction until early 2021, But if not, we request that the developer A tries to minimize loudest construction to afternoon hours instead of morning, and B provides us with notice during weeks of particularly loud construction, as we may need to find and pay for alternative daytime accommodations for schooling and work. Number 2, regarding dirt, residue, dust, and any damage resulting from construction. As the back of our home is only 10 feet from the property line, we expect considerable pollutants to impact our home and yard over the course of the construction process. Our home exterior is white stucco, and we anticipate it will be left extremely dirty as a consequence of construction. We kindly ask that, at completion of construction, the developer agrees to power wash. This is going to the next page. Okay, our home, remove construction-related residue and debris from our yard, and pay for any damage caused to furniture and/or other structures that are kept in our backyard facing deconstruction site. Regarding number 3, regarding the mature oak tree number 4 at the left-hand rear of the lot, we are relieved to learn that the Commission and Menlo Park arborists have requested the mature oak tree and the mature redwood tree be kept and not removed. The oak tree is a key part of what gives our home character. Its trunk is at a property line, and its branches extend over both our yard, providing shade and privacy. Both of our yards, sorry. And of course, the lot at 1340 Hoover. We also read the notes about the current condition of the oak tree and the proposal to trim back the heavy/unbalanced growth that is most prominent on the 1340 Hoover side. While we support this plan and are ready to work with the new owners on an ongoing maintenance plan, we also kindly ask that the trimming of this tree be kept to a minimum needed to ensure that trees' health and/or reduce risk of damage to the newly built property. However, we would be quite disappointed if the tree were overtrimmed simply to provide even more room for the new structure, as it's already planned to be at the minimum required setback from the property line. Thanks in advance for consideration of the above. Regards, Scott and Diana Blum. As the first comment, apologies for the difficulty earlier, and for the second comment, it is a comment card that was provided just shortly before the meeting started this afternoon.
All right, thank you. When we get to public comment, we would like to invite that speaker to use that digital comment card.
Okay, sorry if I may, Chair. Since we'd received it already before the meeting started, I believe procedurally we should be reading it now, but I look to the PC liaison if there is another approach we should take on this particular comment.
Ms. Sandemeyer, I believe that's a prompt for your comment.
Sorry.
Well, in either case, I have no problem with asking for.
I think my connection is a little slow, but I think it is best to have the comments.
Ms. Sandemeyer, we lost you after the phrase, we think it's best that we have the comments, but I'm going to interpret that you meant to have the comments together and to have a verbal now, and I have absolutely no problem with that. So we can go ahead and do that prior to the applicant presentation, if that is what staff prefers.
Yes, I'm happy to respond to that, and I can confirm we can proceed with me reading this particular comment now. And if anyone else speaks or would like to speak during the public comment period, from this point forward, we can have them included at that point. So I'll go ahead and read this now. Thank you, Chair Riggs. This item, of course, is the item that's referred to in this comment. And below, it's a pretty, it's just a shorter description here in the public comment section that reads, concerns regarding the construction process. Hoover Street has had lots of construction, and most recently 1330 Hoover and 1320 Hoover. Significant problems and obstructions in the street. Problems with construction debris in the street causing damage to cars, such as tire punctures And lastly, Hoover has been used as a cut-through street, and we have had incidences of altercations. And this appears to be from a person named Sandra Bardas, and says that they're a resident in the community of 1343 Hoover Street. And that, I believe, is all for that comment, but I will scroll down. Yeah, that is all for the public comments for now. Again, I'm available for any questions that the Planning Commission has. Thank you again, Chair Riggs.
Thank you, Mr. Pruder. Are there any questions from staff, I'm sorry, from fellow commissioners prior to the applicant presentation? All right, seeing none, I think it would be terrific if the applicant came forward to describe the key points of this project.
Good evening. Thank you, everyone. My name is Dan Rhodes. I'm with Young and Borwick Architects. We're presenting the project here tonight. We're very excited about this one. I think I'll first just start off by thanking everyone. It's nice to have this process in place to continue the process going in this digital format, and keep projects moving along. So thanks everyone for the technical and logistical efforts on that. Our property owner, Susie Frimmel, is also here tonight in case there's any questions with O'Brien Homes. But as far as the overall project, as usual, I think our planning staff always does a good job in being very thorough and detailed. I'll briefly touch on a few of the salient points, just to emphasize a few items, and then I'll reserve the bulk of the time for any questions you might have. But starting with the overall site, we have the two existing heritage trees, just starting off with that, the oak at the rear and the redwood more towards the middle. Both of those are being kept. We're also proposing a few additional ornamental trees that are shown in our landscaping plan. Some of those are tree in nature. There's also several that are shrub, not necessarily tree, but will be key to privacy screening various neighbor interactions, bordering neighbors. Particularly the oak at the rear, I think that one is beneficial to multiple properties, and so that one we're able to keep with our site plan and design. The project is for two separate homes rather than one structure. It's an R3 apartment district zoning, which is zoned for increased density, but the nature of the surrounding context is still a lot of single structures, single family homes, just more on one lot. And so we're maintaining that pattern development. I feel like that's a better use of the scale and the massing and making things fit more nicely. It's better for the individual residences and their yards and their private spaces. As far as the two homes in our parking court in the middle, we also feel that, great, thank you. Am I connected to the driving wheel? Good, here we go. So with our proposed site plan here, the existing site, we have the two heritage trees more towards the rear, the oak and the redwood. Our proposed plan calls for the two homes separate. We have the parking court in the middle. We've done, I want to say 5 or 6 of these types of projects just over the last 10 years or so. The parking court is a common theme you see in most of this development throughout the city, but on the lots that are less deep, we end up having to design the parking as a side entry. It just never really fits because we have a 55 50-foot wide lot, and between the 10-foot setback, the garage, and the 24-foot backup, we end up meeting 54 feet of width on a 50-foot lot. So in this case, being allowed to have the depth and being allowed to have the parking enter in this fashion, it just solves a lot of those issues. It creates a nice common neutral area between the two homes to buffer them. It just works out a lot better from off-street parking standpoint, especially for a street like Hoover. Parking is only allowed on one side of the street, and so it's critical that all of the off-street parking solutions are ideal, they're usable, and encourage people to use them and not take up street parking unnecessarily. So this is one benefit of our site design, I feel. I think the scale and the massing of our homes is very appropriate for the neighborhood. There's no cohesive style, which gives it, I think, some nice variety. We've stuck with more of a traditional style home with our two homes. They're not matching identically. They're similar in their massing and their character, but they will have a unique set of finishes on each one. This is the front house, in keeping it more in that traditional vein, keeping it approachable. I think it fits well with the streetscape. Our rear home is this one. The garage is technically the front, is used to look at it from a site design standpoint, but the side down on this location here is technically the front door entry. It's a little tight on that side, just in keeping extra distance away from the redwood tree, but our landscape solutions will create a nice sense of entry as you come down the driveway, emphasizing the pathway and that path approach to the entrance. Overall, with our project, we're conforming in every way. All of our setbacks are height limit. We provide all of our covered parking. We're compliant in our height, even well below the height limit. Going back to the streetscape. Almost there. To the rear is all commercial properties that face El Camino. To the direct right-hand side is a project very similar. We were actually involved in that project. In terms of the overall site design, it's very similar to what we're doing here. Backing up against that is the other property that was one of the neighbors that wrote in with some concern. They share the value of that oak tree with us, which we are interested in preserving as well. All the other properties are a mix of apartments, single-family homes on multiple lots, or I believe duplexes. So I feel that we fit right in. Just to address some of the direct neighbor comments, just to cover that briefly, most of them were focused on the construction phase of the project overall. I can understand the concern about noise, dust, especially in this time when we don't have anywhere else to go, like school or office. We're confined to our homes. As far as dust goes, there's best management practices. Those are part of the city's policy, and those are enforceable in terms of managing dust, excavation, erosion control, and some of those measures, which will be included in the civil engineer's report. As far as noise and traffic, I'm certain everybody involved in this project is going to want to be a good neighbor. As the typical approach in most of our projects, there would be a superintendent or some responsible person from the general contractor side that would reach out to all the direct neighbors and provide some sort of contact phone number in case there's any questions or in case there's any issues that come up. I think their preference in almost every case is that if there's an issue, if there's a problem or a concern, they prefer to contact the contractor directly so they can take care of it rather than have it go through code enforcement. As far as the timing, with our permit approval process in getting through the next stage of our approvals, I'm pretty sure we probably won't be starting construction until next spring, just looking ahead at what we have left to do and the current process, the timing in getting through the different departments. As far as the tree, as I mentioned, we definitely want to keep the oak tree. In studying it carefully, I think we're almost completely clear of the canopy of the oak. There may be one branch in question. Our hope was maybe we could move the house forward slightly and avoid that, but then we're then further compromising the redwood. So its current location, I think, is nestled into a nice spot. There's some crown cleaning they want to do on the oak, just to address, mostly deferred maintenance in terms of, not any of the previous owners not doing any of that. So there'll be some of that, which certainly would want to be coordinated with the neighbor. And then any concerns about privacy there on the, let me go back to the site plan. On the right-hand side of the project, there's a fairly nice mature row of cherry laurels, I believe they are, along that whole fence line, which already currently provides some nice privacy between those two properties. And we're proposing something similar along the opposite side, which will screen the neighbor directly next door, as well as the one that shares the backyard. But overall, I think we're very excited about this project, so I'm happy to take any questions.
All right, thank you, Mr. Rhodes. And you addressed, I think, just about all of the neighbor issues. We'll have a little follow-up later. With that, why don't we take a moment just to see if there's any public comment on the project. Mr. Tapia, well, I have not said my piece yet, which is to the public and those viewing. Please look to the right of your screen and look for the hand icon. If you click on that hand icon, it signals planning staff that you would like to make a comment on this project at this time. I'll give you a moment just to find that and click on it. Alternatively, you could type in a very brief question in the discussion box. I say brief only because we hope to get you in before we close public comment, thinking no one is there. We're looking for any indication, Mr. Tapia.
Yes, Chair Riggs, if you can hear me. Looks like we do
Yes.
have a question, and if I may introduce the speaker. Okay, just as a reminder, you will have 3 minutes to share your comment or question, and please state your name, address, political jurisdiction in which you live in, or your organization affiliation. And at this time, I will introduce Scott Bloom. Again, you have 3 minutes. Please state your name, your address, your political jurisdiction in which you live in, or your organizational affiliation. Scott Bloom, your microphone is now active.
Thank you. Yeah, so we're the neighbor that is across the left side of the lot that had written that letter. So thanks for taking the time to listen to our questions, concerns, and I appreciate the kind of planning that's gone into providing proper privacy screens. So, thank you for that, as well as the timing of the project start. I guess it's more of a question for the commission than for Dan. And I again respect the fact that this is a lot that, we've been a homeowner here for 15 years, inevitably expected there might be building on this lot. So, fully appreciate that. I'm just wondering, is there precedent in Menlo Park for this scenario where we have the rear of our home kind of facing the side of a home that is going to be a 10-foot sort of, gap, per the, I guess, the regulations to the side yard, but it's really 30 feet between homes as opposed to 40, which would be typically from the rear. So we're basically in a situation where the entire rear of our home is, including the view that when you first walk through the front door, we're going to have this massive wall that's just 10 feet from the other fence. And we'll accept that if that's what's required. I'm curious if there's precedent for that in other lots around Menlo Park, because it is going to be a real eyesore for us, which I trust that the screens will help but not fully address. And that was it.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Scott. And do we have any other comments, Mr. Tapia?
At this time, Chair Riggs, I am not seeing any other comments or questions that have been typed in.
Okay, and we've had a chance for people to indicate the hand icon. So with that, I will close public comment. I think I will, before I ask for commissioner comments, I would like to just go to Mr. Pruder and just confirm that the setbacks applying to this two-structure project in R3 conform to the same setbacks that the adjacent properties in R3 would conform to.
Thank you, Chair Riggs, and thank you for the public comment. The answer to that question is yes. This is the same setback requirements. There is no variance being requested. There is no nonconformity or anything that would be considered non-compliant. This is the requirement, the 10 feet on the left side, and just due to the orientations of the properties, this issue has come up before, but it is apparent that it is a shorter distance than if the two were aligned one rear to the other rear property line. Thank you.
Good clarification. That's one of the problems with lots being at 90 degrees due to adjacent streets. All right, so fellow commissioners invited to make comments, ask questions. The floor is yours. Would anyone have comment on this project? Mr. Kale.
Are we still talking to the applicant in that portion of the meeting, or are we moving on to comments?
We have concluded public comment and the applicant is presented. We sought early questions before the applicant and there were none, so please feel free to make comments as well.
Okay, I just did have a couple of quick questions for the applicant. Hi, just wanted to clarify, I saw that there are painted shingles. Are those wood, is that wood siding or is that a fiber cement siding?
I don't know if we've determined it yet, but I would anticipate the fiber cement with the texture, just for the longevity. But in the painted condition, I find that the texture makes it hard to distinguish between the cedar.
And what's your corner treatment going to be?
On the shingles, they will come to a mitered corner, if that was the question.
Yes, and the horizontal siding corners. What will the
horizontal siding? The horizontal siding we're planning on a corner trim board, which just in going with that particular style.
And would that be painted to match the horizontal siding or an accent color?
The corner trim and the field horizontal siding would be matched to the same color, correct?
Great. I noticed are the windows wood windows that are clad? Or
they are, yep, aluminum clad wood windows, correct.
I was going to ask about privacy, but you addressed that very well with the landscaping that will be added, and there's a great distance. It looks like to the adjacent structures. So that works out well. And I noticed you had a cool roof noted. I'm not sure if that's required. It might be. I know Menlo Park required it for a while and then they didn't. So I'm not sure if that's still the requirement or not. Those are my questions. And if we're commenting, I think it's a really nice project. I appreciate the ceiling heights, keep the walls down with 10-foot ceilings and 9-foot ceilings. I really like how the garage for the front house is in the back of the lot. You don't see it from the street. And I think it's a very supportable project for Menlo Park. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kale. Other commissioners to comment? Mr. Ducardi.
Yeah, I say thank you for the very thorough presentation. You anticipated and answered my questions. I too think it's a very supportable project, well designed, well laid out, good use of the lot, fits well in the neighborhood in Menlo Park.
Thank you, Mr. Ducardi. Other comments? I have a question from Mr. Rhodes. You may want to refer this to Susan. The neighbor who wrote the email asked for a couple of things that are maybe a little outside the normal for our projects. One is that their white stucco house have construction dust washed off at the conclusion of the project. Is this something that the applicant would be amenable to?
Hi, this is Susie Frimmel from O'Brien Custom Homes. Absolutely. We want to be good neighbors. We had the same request from the neighbors on the right-hand side, the two homes. They were letters that were sent in earlier, and we'd like to be good neighbors. And if their homes, become really dirty, they need their windows washed at the end of the project, we'd be happy to do that for them.
All right, that's wonderful. I'm not sure how to embed that in the project approval. Let me think about that. And then regarding construction parking, Hoover Street is a little challenging in that there's parking on one side and it's an predominantly apartment street. So parking is limited. If you add a dump truck, a backhoe trailer, and 2 pickup trucks, you've pretty much covered the frontage of about 3 lots. And there will be phases when there'll be rather more vehicles than that. I've had to do for urban projects, and excuse me being from the East Coast, if by urban I mean something rather different than Menlo Park. 30-story buildings, not 3-story. And for campus projects, I had to do a parking strategic plan. We do not automatically require that through the building permit process, but in the case of Hoover Street, I think a parking and access plan would be appropriate for this site. I don't know that we've asked this before on Hoover Street projects. And I'm not going to prescribe what needs to be in that plan. In other words, just how many pickup trucks can be present at the curb. But I do think that having some indication and also a potential off-site parking area for laborers to park so that they can then be brought in the O'Brien van to work in the morning and back at the end of the day would be very helpful, particularly in giving neighbors some expectation. It's also a rather good point that street is, as it's termed, a cut-through street. You could also say it's a key access. If you are southbound on El Camino Real and intent on going to downtown Menlo Park, the bottleneck at Valparaiso encourages you to get off El Camino Real. And the way to do that and get downtown is to go down Hoover Street to Oak Grove. So there is through traffic that is there, has been more than it is today, and will be more again. So I'm going to be so bold as to ask for a parking management plan, or I should say suggest it. And then finally, just to clarify, there was the concern about trimming the oak tree, and that it would be, as the writer indicated, or as the speaker indicated, no more than what is necessary for the project. I believe the arborist report already defines that, but if I could ask Mr. Pruder if I'm correct that the city arborist also puts a limit on how much the tree can be pruned. Am I right in that there is a limit to the interpretation of what needs to be pruned, unquote?
Yes, I guess as a clarification, thank you for your question, Chair Riggs. The specific requirement in terms of the limitation is that you can trim up to 25%, and any more of that of a heritage tree requires a heritage tree removal permit. So the threshold here is 25% of the tree's limbs and branches. And so it will depend on that. I believe the way that the arborist report had indicated and what Dan had mentioned regarding the project is that their intention is to trim less of that amount of tree. So it appears that they likely wouldn't, with what's proposed, they wouldn't necessarily need to trim close to that percentage. But that's definitely a valid concern. And that's basically the threshold that determines whether removal permit, heritage tree removal permit is required. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So with that understanding, I would like to move approval of this project as presented in the staff report for the use permit. And with the stipulation that a construction parking plan be provided prior to the issuance of the building permit. That plan to be coordinated with the planning and building divisions. And then I would just like to note the what I hear, and frankly consistent with the reputation for O'Brien Homes, the good neighbor intent to clean dust off of affected adjacent buildings, and to trim the tree only as truly necessary for the benefit of all. I'm inclined to believe that those statements made here tonight are all we need from a quality company like O'Brien to have some reassurance. That and the fact that the project most likely won't go into construction in the spring, and I think we've covered most of the neighbor issues. Any other comments or perhaps a second from my fellow commissioners? Mr. Kale.
I will second the motion. Did you, regarding the parking plan, was that a question for staff at all, or you just want to make that part of the condition of approval?
No, I'd like that to be a condition of approval, but I am not defining how many pickups and how many dump trucks can be there for how many minutes. I think that's getting much too much into the weeds, and that is something the superintendent will take care of. But the concept would be to have a parking management plan that is reviewed by staff. I would certainly trust in our staff to review that, so that then the neighbors have something that they can refer to and plan on, have expectations.
Okay, that sounds reasonable to me. And I have a note here. There was something you wanted to think about, but I don't remember what that was now. Was there one other item you had?
It was how to embed the commitment for washing the buildings. And so I concluded that we'll work with reputation and statements tonight.
Okay, then I'll second the motion as it's stated.
Thank you. All right, any other comments before we vote? All right, I'll call for the vote.
Sorry, if I may through the chair.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Yes.
Yes, so Chair Riggs, I just wanted to clarify what you have stated as your motion. You'd like to approve the project, of course, with, it sounds like 2 conditions. The first of which being to have the applicant provide a construction parking management plan that would be, of course, prior to building permit issuance, subject to the review of the planning and building divisions. And then could you please clarify the stucco cleaning and washing concern you had a little further?
Yes, certainly. That is not a condition. I'm acknowledging that it was stated by O'Brien Homes tonight. But I did neglect to say something fairly important, which is the design of these projects is quite nice, particularly the front building. And I think this project will significantly enhance Hoover Street. I would have been much remiss not to have said that.
Okay, thank you for the clarification as well.
All right.
That's all from me. We got the conditions. Good to go. Thank you.
All right, good to go. So let's vote. Please click on your video and give me a thumbs up. I have Mr. Doran. I have Mr. Kale. Is anyone left? Mr. Ducardi. It's a free-for-all, so please click. Yes, Ms. Tate, thank you. And Ms. Kennedy did have to leave early. She did warn me. I think I may have extended our comment period just beyond her limits. So indicating that Mr. Barnes and Ms. Kennedy absent for this vote. We have 4, and myself, of course, voting in favor. We have 5 votes positive and the 2 absents. The item is approved unanimously. And thank you to the applicant and the architect. Ms. Sandemeyer, do we have reports or other follow-up issues for our future hearings?
Well, so actually we had a regular business item, which is the appointment of commissioners to an ad hoc subcommittee on ADUs.
Thank you so much. If I had missed that, I would have probably been killed remotely. Fortunately, we are doing a webinar and there would be no physical damage. So this item was requested by myself and the vice chair because ADUs, as you saw, are very topical, but we have a desire demonstrated in the town to increase the number of housing units available. And one of the most effective ways to do that is to have existing owners and existing lots provide units on their own property. And this was the intent of the state law, to urge cities and towns to do this. However, when you want to call them affordable, if you're building 800 square feet on top of a new garage, you are building at probably $600–700 per square foot, and the result is probably not affordable. As I like to say, and I'll keep saying until people are properly sick of it, the words affordable and peninsula do not apply logically to housing. However, existing structures converted to ADUs is also allowed, and this, in my opinion at least, is a financially viable way to provide housing that is not in this mainstream market of $2,500 a month for a studio. The trouble with converted ADUs, say converted from a car garage or from a artist studio or a recreation building, is that they are not legal in terms of, particularly in terms of the building permit. So I'd like to give Ms. Sandemeyer a moment to see if I have structured this introduction correctly. Our goal would be tonight to see who is interested in taking part in a subcommittee of this commission. A subcommittee would work on the side. We would have no budget, no meeting room, and the purpose would be to make recommendations to the city that might further the legalization of the units, and also potentially to prompt what the limits of an ADU can and should be in Menlo Park. Perhaps we'll do something more than the state has required us to, perhaps not. So the purpose would be to create that subcommittee and clarify the task that they would work on. So Ms. Sandemeyer, have I given a workable description of what we might do tonight?
Yes, I think that was definitely good summary. I will add, so as an ad hoc subcommittee, the purpose of the subcommittee, as you explained, Chair Riggs, is for kind of one looking at one topic, and usually an ad hoc subcommittee would be dissolved after a year or less. And also, there's no public noticing requirements for an ad hoc subcommittee, and the meetings aren't public. So that's one thing to know. So there will be 3 members, and no official vote is required. So it can just be a commission discussion, or each commissioner can, in the end, name their top 3 choices, and then whoever gets the most mentions, we could go forward that way, but it's really up to the chair. So that's kind of my summary, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
I would like to invite Vice Chair Michael Doran to comment on what our goals might be, because I'm not the only one who has a vision for this, and Mr. Doran has put particular energy into this project concept. Michael. Audio.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
I'm very happy to see this on the agenda. I think it's a great idea and a very timely one. I think you summarized the need for it quite well. I would like to say I see one other area that I think the subcommittee should be empowered to work on, and that is implementation of the existing zoning rules. We sort of had rules imposed on us, superimposed on us by the state on top of our existing zoning regulations. And we had a good example of that tonight. And I think we came to the right conclusion on the application tonight. But I think it would be useful to develop some guidelines for when we would entertain use permits for things that are not explicitly allowed by state law. So that we could be consistent in the application of, exceptions to the state requirements throughout the city. I think that'd be something else that would be useful for the subcommittee to be able to do, in more detail than it's really feasible to talk about in our meetings. So that's something I'd like to see it do. I think it's a great idea, and I'm interested in the committee. I'm interested in serving on the committee.
All right, I had hoped so. Do I hear interest from any other commission members in participating in this ADU subcommittee? All right, we can have up to 3 members, and I would happily participate along with Mr. Doran. Mr. Kale.
I would also be interested in participating.
All right, wonderful. With that, we have 3. Ms. Tate.
Yes, I would be interested as well.
All right, in that case, we have 3. If I duck out, which doesn't take a lot of persuasion for me to do that, knowing the energy and also the commitments that I've seen since we all have worked together. I think subcommittee of Doran, Kale, and Tate would be fantastic. And I'll have to ask Ms. Sandemeyer, this commission, it would be appropriate for this commission to vote tonight to establish that subcommittee, am I right?
I don't believe a formal vote is needed. I think this discussion was sufficient.
All right, excellent. Then I think for the moment, at least for the introduction, I would like to say that the task of the committee is to come up with the most needed and most viable suggestions that would be presented to council and bring those back to the commission for the commission overall to comment on. And this being entirely voluntary, I think we could create a target for a first report and maybe a follow-up report, depending on the availability of our 3 subcommittee members. Would anyone like to suggest whether we, I'm certainly not going to suggest that we have anything available as soon as October 5. The following Planning Commission meeting is October 19. Would that, as a temporary, as a pencil in target, be suitable for the subcommittee to get back to the full commission? Any suggestions either way, Mr. Dorn?
I would think maybe at least one more meeting, maybe the meeting following that. Just give us a little bit more opportunity to coordinate schedules between the members.
All right, that is very reasonable in this world. That would be November 2. And as your mother always told you, don't leave your homework until the night before. I'm sorry, I couldn't resist. All right. I think with that, we have, by acclamation or lack of acclamation, we have established an ad hoc subcommittee and look forward to what the possibilities may be. I don't know about others, but I seem to be, particularly the last 3 months, just surrounded by ADU questions. I have 2 ADUs on my table as an architect. And where the heck did this come from? Well, part of where it came from is in January, the state law made it easier, but actually both, well, one of the ones on my table is a legalization, and it's in quite a quandary of how to get through. So this is a very topical subject. And that's enough from Chair Riggs. Ms. Sandemeyer, informational items. We are going to have to augment our
now it's working.
system.
Yes. So next meeting is just 1 week from today. So we have a rare back-to-back, or I'm sorry, 1 week from today. So we have the rare back-to-back meetings, and that will include a mixed-use project at 201 El Camino Real, and then will also be the Menlo Park Community Center study session will be on there, and then a single-family home. And then the following meeting will be 2 weeks after that, back to the regular schedule. So that concludes my updates, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you. A couple of very interesting subjects coming up. Ms. Tate.
I have another commitment next Monday and I will not be attending.
All right, sorry to hear. And we'll have to just confirm that Mr. Barnes and Ms. Kennedy can attend, just since they're not here to say otherwise. If there are no other comments tonight, then our meeting is concluded, and I adjourn the meeting herewith. Thank you all.
Night.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Chair Riggs. Thank you, staff.
Good night. Yes.